Thor: Love and Thunder, the PG-13 Marvel movie, got rid of some of Christian Bale's improvised R-rated Gore the God of Butcher scenes. But the more adult version would have been so much better. Gore was already a surprising dark villain for the fourth movie in the Thor series, which was a comedy. The character was played straight, which was a contrast to the funny and crazy world of Taika Waititi's movie. This, plus a lot more. Starting us off, Bale's improvised and R-rated Gore would have been so much better. If Christian Bale had been allowed to push the limits of a PG-13 rating even further, Gore would have been a better villain, and Thor: Love and Thunder would have been a better movie as a whole. In Thor: Love and Thunder, the God of Thunder, the mighty Thor, Valkyrie, and Korg try to save the Asgardian children who have been taken by Gore the God of Butcher. One of the most dangerous villains in the MCU. In the movie, the Necros world takes over Gore and turns him into the God Butcher. This gives the God Butcher the power he needs to do what he wants to do. By the end of the movie, Gore is just a shadow of who he used to be. He's leaking black goo and has lost any good he had left. Gore is freed from the Necros world's power just before he dies, but he still did a lot of bad things. He could have done more though. Thor: Love and Thunder tried to contrast how silly Thor and his friends were with how serious Gore was. But it didn't work out as well as it should have. Instead of cutting out Christian Bale's R-rated improvised scenes, as much as they could have been kept would have made the contrast even better.
Hello, everybody!
Well, look who it is!
How are we doing, guys?
Thor: Love and Thunder's biggest problem was that it was too silly. Having an R-rated Gore could, of course, fix this. Gore's more serious actions could snap Thor out of his funny mood. This change in tone gives the movie's humor meaning, just like what Waititi did in Jojo Rabbit. On top of that, the idea of an R-rated Gore is too tempting not to see. And even though Marvel would never let it happen, it makes the mind run wild. Bale's R-rated Gore is what the MCU needs more of. Even though the MCU doesn't need more R-rated movies, it does need more adult characters who push the limits of what can be done in a PG-13 movie.
Excuse me. Hello. That's my hammer you've got there. And that's my look.
Werewolf by Night and Blade are two upcoming MCU movies that are known for having violent characters. Letting them be more R-rated will make them more true to the source material. Deadpool 3 has ties to the MCU and is rated R, so it's not impossible to make movies that are a little darker. On top of that, the MCU will probably bring back the Punisher and other Dark Defender characters soon, and many of them need to be able to be more violent or sweary. Keeping Christian Bale's improvised scenes could have given Marvel a chance to see how far they could go, which would have opened the door for new characters and projects. Even though these projects don't have to be R-rated, many PG-13 movies are more mature than most MCU movies, and Marvel needs to move in that direction. Even though Christian Bale's R-rated Gore scenes will probably never be shown, they would have helped the character, Thor: Love and Thunder, and the MCU as a whole. Well, Gore clearly wasn't the right villain for Thor: Love and Thunder. In Thor: Love and Thunder, Christian Bale makes his MCU debut as Gore the God Butcher, but the bad guy doesn't fit well with the movie. Except for Josh Brolin's Thanos, who is a giant, it's safe to say that villains are not usually the most interesting parts of a Marvel movie. In fact, many people would say that some MCU movies work even though they have a bad or boring villain, thanks to stunning visuals, exciting action, and heroes who are easy to root for. In Thor: Love and Thunder, though, a lot of people were excited to see how the MCU would use Gore the God Butcher, who is a fairly new character to the Marvel Comics universe. A big part of the excitement was not about Gore the character, but about Christian Bale, who won an Oscar for playing him. Bale famously said that after Christian Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, he was done with superhero movies, so the fact that he was back was an immediate draw for potential viewers. Bale does a great job as Gore, which is typical of him. He creates a villain who is really scary and seems like a real threat to Thor, Valkyrie, and Jane Foster's lives. The problem is that Bale's performance as Gore, who is a very serious and sometimes scary bad guy, just doesn't fit with the rest of Thor: Love and Thunder. Love and Thunder proves Marvel's constant comedy is undercutting its villains. Thor: Ragnarok was very funny, but in Love and Thunder, director Taika Waititi cranks up the silliness to 11. The only time the jokes stop coming is when Gore is on screen or Jane's cancer gets worse. Bale's work as Gore would fit much better in a more serious Marvel epic, but when he shows up on screen, it feels like the mood keeps changing. Even though the difference between Christian Bale's Gore and the movie he's in is the biggest of its kind in the MCU so so far, this is not the first time that Marvel Studios' love of comedy has been used to make one of its villains look bad. There's nothing wrong with a superhero movie having a healthy amount of humor, and many DC movies and TV shows have shown that going the completely dark and serious route isn't always the best way to go. Still, there's a fine line to walk when making a Marvel movie. If the characters are too crazy, it can be hard to take the movie seriously. After Thor Ragnarok was a huge hit, it seems like Waititi was given more freedom in how wild he could get. Even though this makes for some really funny moments, Thor Love and Thunder doesn't always seem to know what it wants to be. Moving on, Thor Love and Thunder missed a major MCU chance for God. Omnipotent City in Thor Love and Thunder introduced people to the wider world of gods in the MCU, but the pantheon of gods from Moon Knight were left out. Throughout its run, Egyptian gods like Khonshu, Ammit, and Taweret were a big part of Moon Knight. Even as cameos, these Egyptian gods should have been in Thor Love and Thunder. It would have been a waste to tie the universe together without them, especially since the Wakandan goddess Bast, who is a panther, made a cameo. Some Marvel Disney Plus projects like Moon Knight and the Marvel special Werewolf by Night haven't always felt like they fit in with the rest of the MCU. Moon Knight is the only Disney Plus show that doesn't have a cameo or a main character who's an Avenger. Even if a show doesn't feature an Avenger like Ms. Marvel, it will always talk about past MCU events and characters, or set up the character's future with an Avenger in the after-credits scene. It seems like a missed chance for Marvel not to mention Moon Knight gods like Khonshu or the cute hippos Taweret in a perfect blink-and-you'll-miss-it cameo. In Thor Love and Thunder, audiences got to see Wakandan goddess Bast in her human form. This was a nice cameo, but it made people wonder where Khonshu was. It would have been great if the digital effects team would have added Khonshu's skeleton bird form. Even if it was just in the background of the scene in Omnipotent City, it would have been easy to put Khonshu in a room with other Marvel gods. Moon Knight needs to be brought into the rest of the MCU. Moon Knight was one of Marvel's most creative shows, and through Stephen Grant and Mark Spector, it showed how people with dissociative identity disorder can be interesting. Even though there are no confirmed plans to bring Moon Knight or Layla's Egyptian superhero Scarlet Scarab into a different MCU title, it would be interesting to see them work with other heroes who have strong ties to religion and mythology, like Black Panther or Ms. Marvel, or even the recently returned Daredevil. Moon Knight's move into the larger MCU will be smoother and feel more natural if he is linked to other characters and titles. A great way to do that would have been to put Khonshu or one of the other Egyptian gods from Moon Knight into Thor Love and Thunder. Even though it would have been cool to see a Moon Knight god make a cameo in Thor Love and Thunder, there will be other chances for Moon Knight characters to show up in the larger MCU. There's always a chance that the show is not part of the larger MCU because it takes place on a different planet. Since the next couple of phases of the MCU will be about the multiverse, it wouldn't be surprising to find out that Moon Knight happened in a completely different timeline. Only time will tell, but for now, people who want to see Moon Knight characters again just have to keep their fingers crossed. Well, that's it for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, cheers!